Hi, everyone. Welcome Under the Moon Gate. I'm Erin Bagwell, a developing intuitive medium, awakening witch, and documentary filmmaker. I'm sharing what I'm learning about living from the dead with stories to inspire us to find the magic within. I have a very special episode for us today because this past weekend I released into the world my new trailer for the documentary, The Resurrection of the Witch. This is a film that I have in development currently. I am in the process of doing all the pre-production work and casting and building the team, but something that I like to do to get people excited and to really solidify my vision mostly is to start shooting and to see, what is this? What does it feel like? What does it look like? And so this is a teaser to the documentary that I'm making right now. And there's so much to say about this film and what it means to me. But something that's coming to me now is that I have been seeking a film about spirituality, and I have been looking for my way in. And I have been creatively knocking on doors that I couldn't open until this year. And I feel like divine timing is everything. And, you know, you're ready for ideas when they're ready for you. And I feel so open and excited and just really blessed to be able to creatively sink my teeth into something that is so meaningful to me. And in order to celebrate this wonderful new chapter, first of all, I need you to go and watch the trailer. So pause this episode, pop on down to the links, watch the trailer, get excited, and then join me for a wonderful conversation with Rebecca Auman, who is the host of Voices in the River, which is produced by Theo Balcom. And it's an extraordinary podcast. I gush all of this to Rebecca when we're speaking, but her podcast really was one of the really meaningful kernels and breadcrumbs that has kind of led me on this journey. And I've had the pleasure of working with her and having her do a tarot reading for me. And so I'm so honored to dive into this conversation and to have you guys listen in on just a couple of witches chatting about spirituality, chatting about animals, chatting about nature, and about this film. And one thing that I will note before I pass it over is Rebecca and I did chat for 20 minutes before I hit the record button. It's fine. Everything's fine. We got some gorgeous pieces of conversation, and she pulled a card from me, which was really just spirit saying, go a little deeper, Erin. So I bring mention to that in the beginning. But so without further ado, here is my conversation with the wonderful and witchy Rebecca Auman.
And I'm going to pull you a card.
Okay.
So relax your jaw.
Ooh.
Put both feet on the floor.
Okay.
Oh, and see, look, you got Jaguar. You're totally fine.
What's the Jaguar mean?
I'm going to let you know. Jaguar calls you to explore beyond the walls that confine you, to go outside your normal routine, to push your limits and boundaries. She is delivering an invitation from your own future to investigate the unknown, to venture into the mystery and the dark places you have been reluctant to explore. Toss all caution to the wind. Know that your Jaguar instinct will serve you well.
Okay, well, that's a beautiful reading, considering that Rebecca and I have been chatting for 20 minutes and I forgot to hit the record button.
It was good practice.
So the Jaguar is asking me to go deeper. I'm feeling the Scorpio tingles.
Uh-oh.
of going deeper. But before we dive into everything, I do want to introduce you. Rebecca Auman has been a huge influence in not only, sharing her resources with me and, telling me books and things I should pick up, but her podcast has been such an anchor for me. I think this idea, we were musing a little bit earlier about giving ourselves permission to step into our power. I think I was attracted to you, Rebecca, because you're a witch. And I was witch curious. And as I'm calling myself now, I'm an awakening witch, trying to figure out what it means to me. And I think one of the interesting things is there don't seem to be any rules. Everybody practices in a different way and a different feeling. Although when I said that, you made a face. So are there witch rules that I don't know about?
No, I was just thinking I had listened to a podcast where a shaman had a very prescriptive way of doing something. And I had just thought, oh, there really aren't any rules. Like the thing that I love about magic, one of the definitions is changing consciousness at will. But it really is such a personal practice. I mean, certainly you can do it in community, but it is about transforming your own consciousness using your free will. So my face was about the prescription part. I agree. It's not prescribed.
Gotcha. What is the most magical thing that's ever happened to you?
Oh my gosh. I feel like I have magical things happen every day. One that stands out for me is that I lived in the Pacific Northwest for a while, and I had been gifted a drum from a shaman, and it was made out of elk. And he had told me that the elk was part of my medicine. Learning stamina was part of my medicine. And then someone had gifted me an elk bone. And my partner at the time, her dog ate it. And so for my birthday, she took me to Jewel, Oregon, which is beside Mist. And it really does look like Jewel and Mist. And there is an elk sanctuary there. And she was a photographer. And it was about 5 a.m. in the morning, huge green fir trees, mist low to the ground. And in elk communities, the young bucks are kicked out of the herd to be their own pod. I mean, they're disruptive, so they're kicked out. And so there was this small gathering of bucks, and one of them had a 5-point antler on his head, and just one. And I was standing there thinking, gosh, how I didn't know that they lost their, I mean, I didn't know that, but I was sort of contemplating, like, how did this occur and he walks right up to me. And I should have run, but
sometimes we freeze.
I was in fight, freeze. I was in freeze. And the 5-point fell off at my feet. So I had received this drum, and then the bone, and then the 5-point. And then they just left. And honestly, I wouldn't have believed it happened, though I do have the 5-point.
Wow.
That's probably the most magical. And part of that was because certainly of the animal medicine, but also because of the place. It was just incredible.
And what do you think the elk was telling you?
Gosh, there's so many things about elk, and I think this is probably, I don't know if this is coming from the traditional medicine cards or from Kim Cran's book, but one, they keep company with their own. And so the women all stay together except for at mating time. So it's about friendship and community. The elk is also about stamina. And I'm a person who is sort of all or nothing. And I think part of the reason that I moved to Oregon was to find my balance and find my way. And I feel like elk has been a very strong leader for me in that. And I think it's just any encounter we have with nature or with animals, even our four-leggeds with whom we live, there's just so much there. There's so much connection and beauty and grace. I just think it's another powerful reminder of the beauty of every day, the magic of every day.
You mentioned that the elk has ties to community.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering how community plays a role in your witchcraft.
We have talked about this before, I think. I was a solitary practitioner for a very long time. And part of that is because of where I lived. And then I met a shaman, Rosemary Beam, who was quite elaborate in her presence in the world. And sort of watching her, I thought, gosh, if you're not out there being who you are, it doesn't help other people unlock who they are.
Wow.
And so that was probably 10 years, though, before I sort of stepped in more to being a witch. But I remember seeing her. She was at this bookstore, and she came out of these beaded curtains, and she had like pink and purple hair, and she's always dressed to the nines, always has beautiful jewelry, and she was just such a presence. And I thought, gosh, anybody that meets her, she calls herself the shaman of the wild divine. And I thought anybody who meets her is going to be wild and is just going to unlock something. And so I thought, I want to be that person for other people. I'm much more understated than Rosemary. Anybody would tell you that. But if I'm willing to talk about my story, if I'm willing to do magic out in public, if I'm willing to read cards for anybody, you just never know when it's going to unlock something.
Absolutely. And we need everyday, witches in our corners. I like to call myself like the neighborhood witch. Like I want to be the person that somebody like knocks on the door and is like, can you pull a card for me? Or calls and says, actually had a friend's mom call me today and be like, I had this spirit. Do you know who it is? I want to be like the gal you call who's like in your neighborhood, who's just like bopping around and talking.
Yeah, I would love to have like an apothecary where people come and get tinctures, I'm not that, I don't have that gift, but I just think it would be so fun for people to come by. And I didn't answer your question, which I used to be solitary, but then when I moved back home to North Carolina, it was my good friends who I think had seen me all along as a witch. And we do a lot of practices at the river and with the moon. So it's been really fun to practice in community.
I think that's definitely something that I'm currently seeking and trying to build for myself is that community, because it does feel so powerful. And I definitely have online communities, but I think I'm really craving that in-person, experience. I'm actually hosting a sound bath at my house
cool.
For the release of the trailer.
And my friend Sarah Rodriguez from Serenade Music,
she's going to do some sound baths for us. So, and all my friends are kind of like, what's a sound bath again? Like, what are we doing? And I'm like, just come, it'll be great. And you'll have fun and, we'll see what happens. So
that's wonderful. Yeah. I used to host a witch camp at my home and,
what's a witch camp?
Well, it sounds sort of like what you're doing. So it's a weekend where we do witchy things. So we make altars and read tarot. And one year we made wands. Another year we made corn dolls. We cook a meal together. We do shamanic journeys. It's very fun. But it sounds like you're having a mini witch camp.
I think so. That's what I'm going to tell people they're doing. I have a friend, Eleanor Turner, and her and I just went to Lilydale.
Oh, yeah.
The other day, and we're like dreaming of having like a house and painting it pink and having like a girl camp, like where people can come and do their, stuff there, to have like a place is kind of exciting.
Yeah. The first place I ever read tarot cards in public was for a 13-year-old's birthday party.
Wow.
And I thought, oh my gosh, I would love to have a witch camp for 13-year-old girls to talk about power.
There's one in Salem. There's it's called the Pink Witch or the Good Witch or something. I don't know. We'll link it in the show notes, but I have a friend of a friend who just joined it. And I think it's actually for even younger girls.
Oh, wow.
To do magic and to things like that. So
when I was little, there were not a lot of witch camps. We didn't talk about witches.
You have told us previously that you were raised evangelical, and part of becoming a witch, if I may summarize your story, is kind of learning to step into your power and step away from the church. How have you reckoned your religious self with your witchcraft? Is that something that's happened at all, or do you keep them separate?
I'm not sure I've ever been religious. It was something that was imposed upon me. I feel like I've always been super spiritual. Though I was a leader, I was a youth leader in the church. And then, maybe in my mid-20s, I went to a metaphysical fair gathering. And there was a woman, I remember walking in this huge building, and it was like a beam of light was coming down on this woman who was in the very back. And I went to her and she said, in order for you to be your most powerful self, you are going to have to integrate this Christianity and your spirituality, and you need to go to seminary. And my father was a minister, and so it was I was like, no, no, no. And she was like, anything you have that strong a reaction to, you're going to have to integrate. And so I did. I ended up going to seminary in New York. I went to One Spirit Seminary. It's an interfaith seminary, so you do 5 to 7 deep dives into different religions. And it was really helpful. I think my relationship with Jesus is still really tough. It's something that I'm working on, because I know it's not Jesus, it's the people who follow Jesus who have sort of tainted him in my mind. Yeah. But, I feel like I have a lot of spiritual teachers. But religion to me, as we had talked about earlier, is prescribed. And it's just not how I think about my spirituality. To me, spirituality is about the mystery. What can you be curious about?
I feel like I've had a real reckoning with my Catholic upbringing, because I just learned about Mary Magdalene.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm having a real love affair with her and Joan of Arc. So I'm in a place of like reimagining what doesn't exist, which is very helpful. But I would love for you to can you tell your evangelical childhood story of how you knew you had your abilities for us?
Sure.
It's so good.
So my dad was a Methodist minister, and in the 3rd grade, when I was in the 3rd grade, our class received Bibles. And my father had a contest where he would call out scripture, like John 3:16, and we were to find it in our Bibles. And the children who found it first would get a prize. And as he would get ready to say it out loud, I could see the chapter and verse come out of his forehead. And so I found all the answers, and before anybody else. And I think my mother, we never talked about this, but she saw it happen. And I know she was a seer, though she never discussed it. And she admonished me, and she said, you were to never tell people what you know, ever, what you see or what you know. So I didn't for a very long time. And, she was afraid. I mean, I don't think she meant to tell me I don't think she meant to silence me. I think she was terrified. Because her mother, her mother was an intuitive, and they gave her a lobotomy, and she was in an asylum for the last 25 years of her life. And so my mother had this real fear. And my grandfather, her father, was a healer. He could blow smoke out of people. So if they had burns, he could blow the burns out. And babies, when they get yeast infections, it's called thrush in their mouth, and he could blow in a baby's mouth and the thrush would go away.
Wow.
So he was revered in his community, and my grandmother was not. But I think my mother was terrified.
First of all, thank you for sharing that story. I wish that was the first time I've heard that grandparents and mothers have been, institutionalized for their abilities. It reminds me actually a lot. My second documentary was about postpartum depression. And I think one of the big fears that women have that they hold on to now in 2024 is that they don't want to be institutionalized still.
Right.
They don't want to be called crazy. Gosh, we hold these these topics are all so layered.
Yeah.
The fear that we carry with us. It's just, honestly, it's amazing we can do anything when you really break it down and think about it.
Yeah. When we're told not to see, not to speak, not to feel. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you work through your fear or your self-doubt? Do you ever have moments where you're, disconnected from spirit, or, maybe you're having a really human day and you're like not seeing or feeling or being in alignment? I used to, when I lived in New York City, and I would miss every train, that feeling of just like being off.
Yeah. Well, first of all, my life, I'm not my life is magical every day, but it's also very human every day. As I tell people, I don't understand really linear time and space. So even trying to park in a parking space for me is a little bit of a challenge. So I do ask my guides to help me, because I park way at the end with lots of space because I can't fit between two cars because I don't understand. Anyway, how do I do it? You know what I've learned, and I've fought myself for so long. I think partly now when things like that happen, I just slow down. It's like sit still, get yourself together, just slow down. And it's like have a drink of water, take a nap. I think there's nothing a nap won't cure.
I agree.
Well, you're a mother of young children, right? I mean,
yes.
There is really nothing a nap doesn't fix. I have a glass of water. I try to go for a walk in the woods. It's really back to basics. That when I get cattywampus is what we'd say in the South, is I go back to basics.
I'd love to know why you returned home, like how the return home came to be.
I often say that the Atlantic Ocean on the East Coast birthed me, and the Pacific Ocean rebirthed me. And I love the wildness of the Pacific Northwest. And I would say it's my soul's home. And during COVID, I lived in a community that probably had 400 people and 250 elk. And I was very isolated. So I'd had a big job. I had retired from that job. I had some online clients, but really super isolated. And it was a dream come true, though. I mean, I walked on the beach every day. I lived in a beautiful garden, but I just needed people and sunshine. And it became really clear to me. And I have a very strong connection with trees, and I felt like the trees were telling me it was time to go. And as I began to ask the question, there's this poet, David White, and he has 3 Sunday sessions where he talks about poetry and reads his poetry. He's brilliant. It was the first 3 Sundays in January, and the topic was, should I stay or should I go? And he said, the second that you start questioning, you've already gone.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, a hawk just flew by.
Oh, wow.
A messenger of divinity.
Oh, wow.
So it was hard for me to come back, but it's been wonderful. And I don't think I could have done the things I've done now without being here, like being grounded. I needed to be grounded.
You mentioned your sister. Are you close with your family now? How have they kind of adjusted to your coming out of the broom closet, so to speak? I have many, many conversations with my mother about what it all means and how it's going. And my brother, what did he say to me the other day? I got something wrong, or I asked him a question and he said, look in your crystal ball again. Like there's a lot of that going on. Curious kind of how that has manifested for you.
Well, both of my parents are dead, so that makes a huge difference.
Okay,
in terms of my freedom to move about the cabin. And my sister has been super supportive. I think she doesn't really understand, but again, has been very open and loving and supportive. My brother is a surgeon, and I think he would probably say I'm making all this up.
Mm-hmm.
My son has been pretty open. Of course, he grew up with it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I feel like I've had a really beautiful level of acceptance with friends and family that have that surprised me.
I agree. I think people are more open than you think they are. I was talking to a neighbor the other day and talking to her about I got something wrong during a reading, and she was like, well, you just started out, like you're not going to be the best, like it'd be like just starting any old job, like you've got to practice and learn the systems. And I was like, oh, that's a very generous thing to say. In which she was right.
Yeah. So what are you most excited about for Sunday?
I love the gathering of women, and I love the idea of kind of being a host for witch camp, as you said, and kind of getting people comfortable in their intuitive nature. Mm-hmm. You know, I really think everyone has the ability to tune in on a level that we don't think we can. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of gatekeeping in the spiritual community of who has access to these conversations or these abilities or gifts or whatever you want to call them. So I kind of love laying the foundation for it all. And when I was talking to Sarah, the gal who is doing the sound bath, she was like, are there any words or phrases you want us to use? And the one that kind of popped into my head was, you don't have to hide anymore.
Oh, I love that. Well, I was going to ask you, was there an intention that you wanted me to hold? Because I'll create a little altar for you. So it's, you don't have to hide anymore.
Yeah. And I that's the last line in the trailer.
Yes.
And it's really the intention of the film is just allowing people to feel free.
Yeah.
To feel permission, to feel like they can step into something that there is a lot of fear around and there is a lot of history with. So,
well, I do think, I mean, I've said this before, the patriarchy really benefits from keeping women quiet.
Yes, they do. And I brought it up earlier, but I think it bears repeating that I just learned from Pam Grossman that some of the first women that were able to take the stage were mediums because they weren't speaking as themselves, they were channeling. Before women got the right to, speak in public, they could be mediums. So this idea of having spiritual power is really intricately laced within us in some capacity. And
Absolutely.
There's a deep history there.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited to explore it and to continue having these conversations. I am starting this little Instagram video series called You Might Be a Witch If. And I'm wondering how you would answer that question.
Oh, gosh. I would say lots of things. I would say you might be a witch if you're a powerful woman. You might be a witch if you blurt the truth. You might be a witch, and I'm stealing this from Devin Cole, if you're a woman in total control of herself.
Wow, wow, wow.
Yeah.
Woo! That sounds great. Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for your time, your energy, your podcast. I hope people go listen to Voices in the River. It's one of my all-time faves. And thank you for just creating the space to unlock so much. Speaking of unlocking, you have opened me. I don't know if you probably don't know this, but when the podcast first came out, or the first couple episodes, I remember commenting and being like, oh my God, is this podcast changing my life? Which I truly feel like it has. And I'm so honored to share space with you.
Oh gosh. Thank you, Erin. It's been just wonderful to see your
remembering
who you are.
I got a new tattoo.
Oh, look at that. It gives me chills.
Yeah. I went to the Mary Magdalene conference in Omega, and the spirit kept saying over and over and over, remember who you are, remember who you are. And I think the film is about remembering, and that's just been a big theme for me. So.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thanks so much, Erin.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Under the Moongate is produced by me, Erin Bagwell. To get episodes delivered to your inbox or learn more, visit my website, underthemoongate.com. To support my new documentary film, The Resurrection of the Witch, please consider becoming a paid Substack subscriber. Thanks, and I'll see you next time, Under the Moongate.